Speaking of internationally beloved works of art, we've got pins on sale. The whole gang is available on our merch store for the holiday season, including the Floof Squad, Vembus Lion, and the complete Zodiac gang. All that, as well as our regular merch, is all 10% off through the end of the year, link below. Great art requires discipline. Each and every one of us can express ourselves creatively, but it's the training, the endless practice, the sheer mental dedication against the invasive thought that I'll never have a good idea ever again, which denotes someone who makes their life out of this. The difference between a scribbling enthusiast and a true artiste. Yet I can just as accurately say that great art also requires disciplines, plural. An understanding of form, motion, and composition, of coloration, of brush technique or chisel work, of how to envision the finished product escaping the blank slate of a canvas or block of marble. Any single medium of artwork, from carpentry to embroidery, requires a vast array of different skills to make art happen. Yet those skills are not limited to just one domain. A sculptor and woodworker share many of the same talents. A painter and illustrator both operate in 2D space. They've specialized, yes, but there's a lot of overlap, and that juicy slice of the Venn diagram is where some artists go next level. Now, in the world of the Italian Renaissance, there are a few great masters who seemed to be good at everything. For the 1400s, that was ace icon Leonardo da Vinci. He was a painter, to be sure, but also Italy's foremost engineer and most daring anatomical biologist. Turning the page to the 1500s, and the Italian art world was dominated by the multimedia genius of one Michelangelo Buonarroti. This artist, who hailed from the same Tuscan hills as Leonardo, cannot be defined by a single artwork because his three greatest hits are each world-shatteringly famous in their respective medium: sculpting the David, painting the Sistine Chapel ceiling, and designing St. Peter's Basilica, the most famous statue, fresco, and church in Italy, quite possibly on the planet. I gave all this setup about talents crossing over, yet I'm still astounded that one man could do all that. But as we'll see over his 7-decade career from the late 1400s to his death in 1564, Michelangelo's mastery of the arts is best understood through one specific medium, the one he enjoyed most and through which he interpreted all other art forms. So, to appreciate the artist who produced the crowning achievements of the Italian Renaissance, and in so doing see why Signor Buonarroti saw himself as, above all, a sculptor, let's do some history. Now, despite assertions from his contemporaries that Michelangelo was not trained by man but inspired directly from God, Mikey Boy was abundantly a product of his environment, the city of Florence. Born in 1475 and taking his first formal apprenticeship at 13, Michelangelo learned in the heart of the Renaissance at the height of its action. In the 1490s, he took his talents on the road and first encountered the city which would occupy most of his 77-year career, Rome. There we find Mikey masterpiece number 1, a sculpture of the Virgin Mary holding the body of her dead son Jesus, known as the Pieta. This was a recurring motif in Christian art, but earlier portrayals were more rigid, flatter, and struggled to pose an entire body on someone's lap. This Pieta, completed in 1499, addresses all of that while making it look effortless. First, the drapery, which not only is rendered gorgeously, that texture contrasts with the smooth skin on the face of Mary and the body of Jesus, bringing visual clarity to the two most vital elements: boy dead, mom sad. The broken body of Christ is very angular, while Mary's lap and arms support him in a smooth cradle, as if to wrap him in all that drapery. Listen, I can point at stuff all day, but eventually the art speaks for itself, and what it says is, this is a really nice statue. A masterpiece out the gate, and he was only getting started. In 1499, Michelangelo returned to Florence, where he was tasked with sculpting the biblical hero David. The result, which you do not need me to remind you, is probably the most famous piece of marble in history. But why? Well, on sheer technical skill, this is astonishing, from the realism of his musculature down to the veins and tendons in his hands. I fully believe this statue can move, but just chooses not to. But also, the pose Michelangelo picked has historic significance. Like the bronze David by the artist Donatello in the 1400s, the figure is in contrapposto. The weight is on one leg, torso is tilted, there's a realism and dynamism in how he's standing. However, Donatello shows David after the battle, standing on the head of Goliath. Mikey's David, by contrast, has the sling in his hand and looks visibly determined to absolutely no-scope this man. Anticipation is built into the very pose, and for the Republic of Florence, that had political symbolism. David was a small guy versus a big adversary, and Florence was, at the time, an independent republic with no Medici overlords on the same geopolitical field as monarchs and empires. The Florentines might be small, but they were mighty and ready. So while the statue was outstanding on aesthetics alone, that symbolic significance to Florence was vast. Despite intending to place David high on a balcony of the Duomo, Michelangelo's masterpiece took pride of place in front of the Palazzo Vecchio, a triumph of sculpture work and a definitive symbol of Florentine Republican pride. Now, with two examples to consider, the theologically emotive Pieta and the classically confident David, let's see how the sculptor's mindset informs 60 years of work, starting with the Doni Tondo. This round-frame portrait of Mary, Joseph, and baby J has, for one, some beautiful color work on those silks, but it also shows off some novel and truly fascinating poses. Mary sits sideways, twisting up and behind her to reach for the baby, while Mini J steps up off of Joseph's lap and onto Mary's shoulder. That's an intricate set of interlocking motions to capture, but it looks so easy and elegant because Mikey Boy understood all of them as full 3D figures. This also gave him strong command of light and shadow, because he saw exactly how a light source would bounce and bend around these complicated shapes. Even Raphael, whom we love, would be playing catch-up for years on Michelangelo's light. Also, it's not important, but shout out to all the dudes in the background awaiting baptism. Sins cleansed. Willies out. That's how Michelangelo rolls. But this, of course, is not Michelangelo's most famous painting. That would be the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. Michelangelo had gone back to Rome in 1505 to construct a tomb for Pope Julius II, but in 1508 he was reassigned to paint the ceiling of the Pope's personal chapel. This was frustrating for him, as he much preferred working on the 40 statues for the tomb and told the Pope outright, "I'm a sculptor, not a painter," but Julius, the obstinate little Grinch, insisted. Thus, Michelangelo was dragged kicking and screaming into creating the single most famous ceiling on the planet. That poor man. Now, at a glance, there's a lot going on. It's a burst of vibrant colors and truly so many figures, but let's start where the story does, creating the universe. The central spine of the ceiling is a 9-scene sequence of Genesis, beginning with God's cosmic DIY project through the creation and exile of Adam and Eve, ending with Noah and the flood. You don't need me to tell you the art is excellent, but it's great for similar reasons that the Doni Tondo was great. Vibrant colors, strong shadows, and the best poses. Creation of Adam going insane over here. Mwah! Gorgeous. It's that sculpture mindset serving him so well. Now, these scenes, great as they already are further elevated by how Mikey Boy fits them into the rest of the ceiling, pulling more interdisciplinary shenanigans from the world of architecture. He surrounds the Genesis scenes with the illusion of stonework, framing them like windows into biblical history while creating a believably 3D structure for other figures to occupy. Immediately adjacent to Genesis sit decorative male nudes because, hey, this is Michelangelo, he has a type, but further along this scaffolding of stonework sit major Old Testament prophets and pagan symbols like the Oracle of Delphi, Hey Girl Hey, as unbound by any literal frame as their powers of prophecy are thematically unbound by linear time. There are 1,000,001 reasons this painting is brilliant, but I'm most struck by how clearly it showcases his mastery across 3 artistic disciplines. So we've covered sculpture and seen how that informed his paintings, now let's assess how the sculptor mindset shaped his surprisingly influential career in architecture. This began in earnest back in Florence, where Michelangelo returned in the mid-1510s. His main project was a series of overhauls to the Church of San Lorenzo by request of the Medici family, who at this point were back in power. It's a whole pope fight, don't worry about it. This included a proposed facade for the church, adjoining library, and mausoleum chapel with statues. We love to see it. However, he really hit his architectural stride when he went, oh, that poor man, back to Rome again. Among other projects like painting the Last Judgment on the Sistine Chapel wall, Pope Paul III tasked Mikey Mike with overhauling the Capitoline Hill, the seat of ancient Roman power, now a muddy mound at the edge of town. So, in 1534, he got to work. As Michelangelo found it, the Capitoline Hill, or Campidoglio, was unpaved and asymmetrical, with the conservator's palace not even at a right angle to the main Senate building. His solution was unconventional, but extremely simple. Instead of wrestling that geometry, he emphasized it, building an opposing palace at the same acute angle to make the piazza a very subtle trapezoid, in the center of which went the bronze equestrian statue of Marcus Aurelius. As for the buildings themselves, he designed matching facades for the side palaces, where the main feature are tall square columns running the entire height of the building, unifying its facade as one vertical form. This was an existing but rare style known as the Giant Order, which he likewise put on the main Senate building. It also got a grand staircase because it's the fancy one. Some of these changes were big and flashy, while some are far more subtle, but they all demonstrate how Michelangelo understood this project as one unified space, one architectural body. Sculpture brain at work. And all this would serve him on his last great project, and by far the biggest, the new St. Peter's Basilica. Now, Michelangelo did not begin this project. It was initiated in 1506 by our boy Julius II and was in progress for 4 decades at this point under various architects. But in 1546, Pope Paul reassigned it to Michelangelo, and once again, he was distraught to be doing anything besides sculpting, but he dutifully worked on it until his death 17 long years later. So what did he build? Obvious answer: dome. Michelangelo streamlined the original plan by Donato Bramante for a square Greek cross layout with a big central dome, strengthening the walls and reconfiguring the dome to be more like the one in Florence. The man has taste. As for the walls of this peerlessly massive building, he once again used the giant order, which allows for details and big windows without becoming cluttered. Despite this being a building, this design has the quality of a great statue, strong forms arranged cohesively in balance. Work on the Basilica continued for several decades after his death, with the later additions of a way too long nave that obscures the dome, plus a frankly clunky facade where the triangular pediment is not at the top. Why is it not at the top? But however ill-advised those tweaks might have been, they don't spoil that the Basilica as a whole is, one more for the books, a masterpiece. It is hard to find a point in time where a single artist had such a colossal impact in such varied mediums, but Italy in the 1500s is quite simply Michelangelo's world. He seamlessly blends 2D and 3D, and the qualities that make all of them outstanding are so clearly grounded in his one true love, sculpture. It's so fun to look at his paintings and think, wow, that would make a killer statue, and then immediately consider, you know, he probably would have had more fun if this was a statue too. Thank you for watching. One funny story I didn't really have space for. While working on St. Peter's in 1559, Michelangelo received a letter from Duke Cosimo de' Medici basically saying, "Mikey, my Florentine boy, what are you doing in Rome? We miss you, we love you, please come home. You can work on literally whatever you want, we just want you working on it here." Despite his apprehensions to Medici rule, Michelangelo was touched and responded, "That's very nice of you, but I've gotta finish the scale model of the dome so they don't mess it up after I die, but once that's done, I'll come back." Alas, work was work, and Michelangelo spent the last 5 years of his life in Rome, toiling away at that big old dome.